So hello everyone, good morning. Welcome to the Take Your Job Search to the X Level presented by General Electric Credit Union and the Xavier Leadership Center. Both organizations share a mission to serve families, individuals, and communities across Greater Cincinnati region. We're excited to do that through this 8-session series to help you learn what works and what doesn't directly from professional career coaches, human resource executives, and hiring managers who work with some of the area's largest employers. For a few logistical things for our session today, we ask that you use the chat feature for requested exercise feedback, questions, and comments. We'll monitor chat and share the thoughts, ideas, and reflections. We'll have time at the end of the session for question and answers, but feel free to submit your questions on chat as they come up for you. Today's session, Getting into the Job Search Mindset, is led by our partner, Annette Ballard. With 2 decades of HR experience, Annette has helped C-suite executives, those in transition, and those looking for that key promotion. As a strengths-based leadership coach, she has helped thousands discover their true aspirations and soar to their dreams and purpose. Annette, thank you for being with us today and for sharing your wisdom and your experience.
Thank you, Carol. It truly is my pleasure to be with you today. And as I evaluate where we are, maybe this isn't where you wanted to be in your life right now. Job loss wasn't in the brochure and likely not a part of your life plan. And you may have lost your equilibrium and that's not enough. There's COVID. And with that, then an uncertain economy. And man, are you finding, like I am, that life can be a contact sport? Today, we're going to be covering some intangible factors of the job search, and we're going to be talking today about the impact of job search. We're going to stare down the fear factor and zoom in on some ways to retool ourselves to be even more productive and able to move forward. And lastly, we're going to talk about trust in the job search process. It is a process. We have to embrace the process. We have to work the process. But before you log off, we're not going into fluff today. We're just going to acknowledge the elephant in the room. People would describe me as a linear thinker. I'm a doer. I'm very practical, rubber meets the road coach. But I do want us to stop a minute here and acknowledge and just evaluate where we find ourselves. So like if we could pull off the interstate of life and just park here at a rest area for the next hour, and let's just assess all the variable factors of our circumstance. So what would you say has been the impact of job loss for you personally? So that really can encompass a lot of different facets of our life. So I'd like for us to start today with an exercise. I want to hear from you. What are some of the ways in which your life has been impacted by job loss? So what we're going to do is I'm going to give you just a few moments, and I'd like for you to pull out a piece of paper and pen or jot down in your phone some notes. And I'd like for you just to list some ways that you've been impacted by job loss. I'm going to throw on some music, and while you work, and give you a few moments to start that process now. So now that you've had a few minutes to think about this, I'd love to hear what you have to say. And I'm going to request that you use the chat box and just begin to share with us what are some of the ways that your life has been impacted by job loss?
So Annette, we're getting some really good comments here. So feelings of instability and uncertain direction, lots of connections with colleagues and acquaintances, not been impacted, but would assume that bills are behind, mindset is negative, stressed, uncertainty of the future, self-esteem stress, or self-esteem stress, humility. So that's a good one as well. So all kinds of feelings here.
Wow, thank you for contributing. It just, this job search itself can be discombobulating, but then for us personally, but gosh, we spend like 40 plus hours a week at work, right? So, I mean, like this really touches everything. And so you've contributed great responses. Absolutely, our finances can be impacted. There's that sense of security that keeps us up at night, that we're worried, and like the boat may be really far from the dock, and how do I take that next step? And just the structure and the routine of our lives, and the future may seem pretty uncontrollable. It really has always been. And the economy, uncontrollable. And, what I see in job seekers is that all this just breeds fear in us. And on top of all that, our self-esteem has been impacted, and our identity. It's like, who am I? What I've noticed when people meet one another for the first time, they ask one another, what do you do? Where do you work? And what's your background? Those are really common introductory questions. And we are so defined by our doing. And, when we've encountered job loss, we may be stripped of our identity. Some years ago, I heard someone say, we're human beings. We're human beings, not human doings. My boss tells me that I get into my doosphere, not my atmosphere, my doosphere. And I personally benefit from pausing to realize that I'm not just what I do. I'm more than what I do, and you are too, more than what you do. So let's talk, like, if you will, just be transparent with me. And since job loss for you, what are some of the emotions that you've had rolling around in you since your job loss? Would you just throw some of those into the chat box? What are some of those emotions that are rolling around inside of you since job loss?
So some good things pop. Helplessness, frustrated, insecurity, frustration, a lot of that, a lot of uncertainty, as you mentioned, lack of identity, depression, scared, overwhelmed, mixed feelings, some mixed feelings too, rudderless, that's a good analogy, anger, numbness, unworthy. Yeah.
So
Overwhelmed.
This emotional part of our job loss, first of all, I tell you, these feelings are so normal.
Yeah. Jealousy. That's an interesting,
Wow.
yeah.
All of these, there's the scope of the emotion. And I would say it's sort of like grieving, wouldn't you think? And that, we're not going to feel the same emotion all the time. And we may be on a roller coaster of our emotions. Nobody said relieved. I wonder, maybe secretly, sometimes are we relieved that we're in a place of transition? And, I heard kind of an undertow of that fear. And the job search itself really can seem daunting. I'd say job search is hard work. And I'd go so far to say is that your job search may actually be more difficult and harder than the actual role that you'll be hired to do. Do you get that? The job search component may actually be more difficult than the actual role that you'll be hired to do. So what I'm going to ask us to do is, like in football, I want us to stare down that fear factor and get into the face of this job search, because in working with job seekers through the years, they may not have used words, but their actions scream this to me. This is what I hear in what they're not doing and what they're not saying is that, and then I'm afraid to start in a role where I might not be as confident, like that I won't know everything and I won't know what I don't know. I can be vulnerable in a new role, and new things, they can be scary, and that I may get out there and fall down, and I don't want to put myself in that situation. In my former position, I knew what I was doing and I knew the backdrop and all the details. Or maybe they're an introvert like I am. That may seem unusual, but I very much am an introvert. And putting yourself out there, oh my gosh, it takes so much energy to have to put yourself out there and to talk to strangers and get out from behind our computer. It's like stranger danger, stranger danger. It's just fearful to put ourselves in that situation. And maybe you're in a career transition, maybe you're a career changer, and you might have the imposter syndrome, that psychological phenomenon where you aren't able to internalize your compliments, and you can just be paralyzed to the point where you don't put your pole in the water, so to speak. So like when you fish, you've got to put your pole in the water to catch a fish. But what I see happen oftentimes with job seekers is that fear is such that they'll look at job postings, but they won't put their pole in the water. They won't apply. And then if you don't apply, then you don't get an interview. And if you don't get an interview, you won't be offered a position. And all that can kind of get in our head and really paralyze or sabotage our job search efforts. So what frightens you about job search? What frightens you about career transition? Whether this is your first role out of college and wow, if you just graduated, welcome to the real world. Or if you're mid-career, or maybe even nearing retirement. What frightens you about job search? I want to.
So great go ahead.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. So lots of great things popping up. So again, a lot of people agreeing with the sabotaging when they see something and they might not think they're qualified. A new start after 25 years, not getting anything at all, getting rejected. The requirement, not being able to fill requirements is a big one. Let's see, the unknown, my age. Will anyone even hire me at this point? Having to take something boring and at low pay from what they were doing before. Imposter syndrome, that's a big one. Not finding the right fit that's out there. Constantly keep tweaking the resume and continuing to make it, try to be perfect. Yeah, being overqualified. So resume bots. So not getting your resume through HR people, the unique word searches. So the new technology that's come out and really not understanding, how to get through all that, which is a great one. A new start. Too old, not the right experience, rejection. So great ones here. My skills too narrow to qualify. So how do my skills transfer to something else if that particular niche isn't available? Yeah, so great responses here. New technology and new skills needing required for the jobs.
Mhm.
And then all the overwhelming work that goes into it. Yeah. So yeah, great responses. Thanks, everyone.
Oh, and I'd like to say to you that I propose to Xavier and G Credit Union that we take your responses and we use this input, this valuable input that you provided to us to help us structure the material that we give in the subsequent sessions together. So thank you for your contribution. We appreciate that you've um, identified and voiced all of those different pieces and parts to the job search. And there are some real challenges and real barriers in job search. And I think that that's going to be unique for each person and the journey that they've been on and the path that they're on and where they want to go. So there's not like a pat answer that we can give to each of these scenarios, but I would say to you that we need to begin to think about how we're thinking about all of these challenges and barriers. And that's really at the heart of what I wanted to talk about today. So, some people would say to me that job search isn't like it was when I started my last role. Everything's online. Somebody mentioned the bots. That's a challenge. And that's something that we absolutely need to educate ourselves about. What are those applicant tracking systems snagging from our resume, and how can we match? And something as simple as, oh, wow, we probably shouldn't put our contact information in the header of our resume because the bot's not capturing that information. So you can be applying or just throwing your application into a black hole. Maybe they've already filled the position and maybe it's just protocol that they post the position out there. So job search is different than like used to. We'd go fill out an application and we'd talk to somebody, and now it's just so automated. And I don't enjoy the online process, and there's a lot of pieces of the online process that I don't like. One is which you're going to take 45 minutes to apply for a position. Really? They can't take the information from your resume and populate that into those fields. You've got to do that manually. Or then you finish after 45 minutes and then you take an assessment. And then, oh, for crying out loud, you never hear from anybody. You never get any feedback. Can somebody just respond? So and then, since COVID, we've switched to not only of all of these other facets of the job search changed and morphed and transformed, but now we've got this virtual interview experience, which is quirky. And then there's that whole piece of technology that can actually be pretty stressful, right? So these mindsets and all these that you've contributed today really can impact our mindset for our job search. And you'd say, how? What do you mean in that? I'm saying like negative Nelly. That's what I'm calling it, or negative Nell. You can own those mindsets, and you can say to me, Annette, there's no jobs out there. I'm not seeing anything, or I'm underqualified, or I'm overqualified. You may be right, and you likely are, but let me ask you, how are owning those attitudes working for you? There's an ancient proverb says that when you're riding a dead horse, you need to hop off. So here's what my grandma said. Grandma always said, thinking it so makes it so. So what does a negative impact look like in your job search? So I would propose to you that it's reduced productivity. So you sit down to do your job search and your eyes glaze over and you're just looking at job postings, and it's just, you're not motivated. It's like, what's the use? And, I don't like this and I don't want to do this. And I could go take the dog for a walk or wash the car or empty the dishwasher, right? We find other things to do. It really can minimize our creativity. I'm going to probably say this more than once today, but we're in a competitive job market right now. And when we have this negative Nelly or negative Nell attitude, it can really minimize our creativity. And I'm going to propose to you that we as job seekers in this economy need to be creative. So I'm going to challenge you to think outside the box. I don't want you to be like off the wall, like them say, oh my gosh, check out this dude or check out this gal. This is like creepy. No, I'm not asking you to look at creativity that way, but I just want you to think about like, what can I do a little different? Like, and then when we're not motivated and we're so negative about job search, our own personal growth is stunted. Now, I don't know everything, but I do know this. The internet's not going away. Applying online and the whole application process is not going away. I also know that the economy, it is what it is. And my rotten attitude's not just about what it does to me, but also the influence of that of the people around me. And I would even say potential employers can pick up on that. So think about this. You know, if you're being a Debbie Downer, sorry if your name's Debbie, or Nell or Nellie, it's just an expression. We really don't like to be around negative, whining people. We have a fragrance, if you will, about us in our actions or in our interactions and our emails and in the interview process and in our connections with other people. People, they'll sniff you out. So I'm going to challenge you to take responsibility for your attitude surrounding the circumstance that you find yourself in, that I find myself in today, and that is searching for our next role. I saw this quote, "Don't be afraid of change. If nothing ever changed, there'd be no butterflies." So this process, and it is a process, just like the job search is a process, this process, what happens is inside the chrysalis, the old body parts of the caterpillar are undergoing a remarkable transformation called metamorphosis to become the beautiful parts that make up the butterfly that will emerge. And in this time that you're in, that chrysalis, if you will, of your job search, there's something coming out that's going to potentially be better than what it was. So how do we overcome that fear factor? If we're going to stare that fear factor down, I propose some ideas about how to overcome that fear factor. The first is some preparation. So emotionally and mentally, we've got to have a little bit of a mind shift potentially. Physically, we've got to get moving. Like I'm talking about like getting off the couch, putting down the bonbons, turning off the soap operas, and just doing what you're doing today, for instance, just getting ready. And I would say to you, another way to overcome that fear factor is just do it afraid. So one of the things I really prompt my clients to do is to make follow-up calls after they've applied for a position. They hate it. They want to sit behind their computer and just do job search without, they want to send an email, but talk to a person like Annette, they don't want me to call. And when I call, what do I say? And so I coach them around making those productive follow-up calls, not just to mark it off your list that you made the follow-up call, but I ask them to eat the frog. So do that thing first that you don't want to do. And then reward yourself. Know going in that if I do that thing I'm afraid to do, maybe for you it's a networking event. I'm not exactly sure what fear that you might have, but what I'd say is identify something that you can reward yourself. So for me, when I have to do something I don't want to do and I do it, I go to McDonald's and get a Dr. Pepper, a large Dr. Pepper. They're the best. And so just something as simple as doing it afraid, but then rewarding yourself with whatever that is that to celebrate that you've accomplished it. Maybe for you to overcome that fear factor, it's some support. Perhaps it's getting involved in a job search group or having a job search buddy and having some accountability. What about you? What have you done that you might share with us in the chat box that could really be beneficial to others? Like, how can you move forward afraid? So what have you done? Would you add that to the chat box?
Yeah, so we've got networking. May not be the easiest thing, but but doing it. Yeah. Classes, taking extra classes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
the webinars. Yeah. Let's see, leveraging contacts in LinkedIn, reaching out to former colleagues, scheduling more time specific to be productive,
right.
Reaching out for someone to review my resume, reading,
right.
studying. Let's see. Yeah, so similar to our series on how we're going to show how to use resources and how to write your resume. So participating in things like this. Yeah. Job search focus group. So that's a well-known group, right? Joining a group. Saying to yourself, the worst thing that can ever happen is getting a no. That's the worst thing that will ever happen. Yeah. Just staying hopeful, finding ways to stay hopeful. Making friends and family aware that you are looking for a job. So support. I think that's a big one.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Faith, turning to faith.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So some great ones there. Yeah.
Perhaps in your interview session, the facilitator will mention this, but I know like doing that Superman pose, just being strong and rehearsing and just some of those, you've just added some fabulous input and insights that are so actionable, and wow, you all are in a good spot. Thank you.
They need to go get a Dr. Pepper.
We do.
Yeah.
As I said to you earlier, I'm going to say it more than once, and maybe this will be my last time, but we are in a competitive job market. So I looked at this weekend was when I last checked, and unemployment's at 10.2%. And what we have to do now is we are going to have to sell ourselves. How can we do that? Job seekers say to me, Annette, interviewing's just smoke and mirrors, just telling the interviewer what they want to hear. Some of the job seekers have said to me, Annette, I just don't like to talk about myself. And, in the job search, when we're selling ourselves, we sure don't want to come off as desperate, right? Anybody hire me. We can't make someone hire us, just like we can't make someone marry us when we're in that dating phase. And what I've realized and come to know is that sometimes the people who are the best interviewers are the ones who get the job versus the one potentially that's the most qualified. And sometimes it just comes down to really not being intentional in selling themselves and their skill set. But some of that comes from just the fracture that we've experienced during job loss, or maybe we've never had to sell ourselves before. But the upcoming sessions that are scheduled, like dialing in your personal brand and getting your resume ready and your cover letter and your social media and your LinkedIn and being ready for your interviewing. What I'd like for you to do as homework, like when have you last had homework? Maybe some of you have, but it may have been a while since you've had homework. I'm going to ask you to make a parking lot. And I want you just to start gathering some verbiage in one place. And maybe begin now, between now and the next session, where maybe you pull out your previous performance reviews and you start creating those work experience stories so that when the behavioral interviews come, you've got some real life stories that you can share of experiences through your career history. Because to market our skill set and to set ourselves apart from the competition and make ourselves memorable, we have to retool ourselves. So HR professionals have a term they use, and that is the quality of hire. So they have a measure or a cultural fit, if you will, when they make a hiring decision. So I'm going to ask you to help me to create a David Letterman top 10 list. So that's going to be our next little chat. I want you to think about what are the top 10 list of traits or characteristics that employers seek? What are the top 10 list or traits of characteristics that employers seek? So take a few moments, and if you would, just throw those into the chat box now. Carol, what's our input, the contributions of some of the top 10 list of characteristics?
Strong communication, collaboration, performance-driven, willing to learn, positive attitude, flexibility, integrity, honesty, leadership, self-awareness, open to feedback, empathetic. Some really, really good ones. So bilingual, harmony with coworkers, strong emotional intelligence, motivation, and passion. Some really good ones.
Absolutely. Thank you for those. You know, what we'll do is we'll try to pull that language together so that we can formulate what would you consider to be the top 10 traits that employers would want in their quality hire. You know, when you start in your new role, you really have a clean slate. So what I want you to do is to think about how when you start your new role, how would you choose that your new employer describe you 6 weeks into your new role? So like within 6 weeks, what would you want your colleagues and your employer to say about you? So I'm going to, again, put on some music, and I'm going to give you a few minutes to craft your answer. So how do you want your new employer to describe you 6 weeks into your new role?
So we got some good ones here. Focuses on results, willing to learn a new skill, able to get along with others, effective, collaborative, loyal, excels in all aspects of the role, motivated, charismatic leader, let's see, adaptable, confident, competent, ready and available, open to feedback, always gives 100%, ambitious, brings new suggestions. Let's see, asking for help, ready and available. Yeah, great, kind, creative, great adjectives. Is a good culture fit. Yeah, that's a big piece of really deciding where what you take and where you go, right? So
absolutely,
a joy to work with, friendly, kind. Great answers.
Good. Really good. So what I'm going to ask you to do one more thing, and I want you to use your parking lot this time. And with your new clean slate, I've thrown some words up on the screen just in anticipation of some of the contributions. You may have your own, but what I'd like for you to do now is just to take a couple of moments, if you will, and I'd like for you to choose, let's say 3 that you really want to be part of your brand. What is it that you want to leverage in your job search process that is unique to you, that's your own blend? And this isn't going to be all you are. This is just going to be what you would like for the employer to perceive. And, you know, in marketing, there's got to be like, I think something, I'm not a marketing person, but like 7 touches, if you will. So we want to say the same thing over and over without saying the same thing over and over. So just jot down for you in your parking lot, what are those 2 or 3 descriptors that you would like to be part of your brand? So as you do this, and this may be an ongoing homework assignment, if you will, but you may need to stop and ask yourself, what adjustments do I need to make in my job search mechanics in order to align myself with my next employment opportunity? And then consider, what should you do and how should you act to cause people to make those statements about you? So being intentional to integrate those characteristics into your brand. And the strengths and branding session is actually coming up on August the 20th with Valerie Pliss for your personal brand and strengths. And you absolutely do not want to miss this session. It's going to be actually a great foundation for you to build your entire job search process. But in the meantime, let's be thinking about your unique selling proposition. So what experience are you bringing? What value, what strengths, what education? You know, what are you bringing to the table? You know, it's true. If you read a job posting, employers want all that and a bag of chips. That's what they want. But
Annette, real quick, can you flip
sure.
back to the previous slide?
Sure.
People want to, yeah, if people want to screenshot it, they can. We'll also have the video available, and we can send out the list as well.
Good.
So you want to take a question?
If you'd like, sure.
Okay. So there's a question is, let's see. Is there a hierarchy of importance that hiring managers place on characteristics? They can't all be as important as the next.
Great question. I think that we have to play to our natural strengths and talents, and I think that'll come into play as a factor next week as you start to, or your next session on the 20th. Absolutely, you'll be able to make that a part of who you are. But in the job posting and in the advertisement, we really need to sort of capitalize on the verbiage that they're using and the order in which they use it, not to play to the employer, but at least to match and to know what their hot buttons are. Going out to the LinkedIn company page and seeing like what are some of the words, like when in Rome, do as the Romans, just let's speak their language at least, right? So you need to have some words and characteristics and traits that are true to you, that are non-compromise. But absolutely, you should be looking at the current employment opportunity. And there's actually an ONET website that will speak specifically to the responsibilities and tasks of a particular role that you may want to explore yet further. So that may be, I hope that answered your question, because we can't be all things to all people. And employers now, when they're advertising a job posting, they're asking for it all. And because they can, right? So, but let me say that I can tell you what employers tell me that they want. And these are employers that in the last 6 weeks have said, Annette, these are the candidates I'm looking for. I'm looking for someone with a great attitude. You know, our attitude comes out in the words we speak, in the inflection in our voice, and in our body language. And attitude rules. Employers say to me, and now I'm looking for a problem solver. I want somebody who's solution oriented, who can collaborate with others to come to a solution, who can play well with others and contribute and complement in a team environment. And this one kind of surprises me, but they want passion and enthusiasm. You know, I think that when we go to a job interview specifically, we're kind of dialing it back a little bit, and we don't want to seem too over anxious. But employers are saying to me, you know, it's not that I need a job, any job, somebody give me a job, but it's like, you know what, I want to work here. I want to fulfill this role. And I'm not asking you to be cheesy. I'm asking you to be authentic. And that is in the confines of what you're selling, your skills and your natural talents and strengths. But what are employers looking for? They're looking for a great attitude and a problem solver and somebody who can play well with others and someone who has passion and enthusiasm. That's you, right? You can do that, right? You know, job seekers have said to me that they're too old. And that was one of the responses today. And, you know, my word for that is hogwash. Employers that I speak to really annihilate that mindset. And what I've seen in real time, I've worked with high school graduates and college graduates to employment. I've worked with folks in their 70s toward employment, and it's oftentimes the younger worker that's being discriminated against. And so we have to maybe recalibrate our mindset as we think about our own mindsets and understand and realize and know that that may not be the case. It may be our perception. Now we've talked to Carol, you started to say something.
Yeah, I was going to say, another tool to add to really understand ourselves better and then see what we need to do to shift if we do is to ask 10 people that really care about you or that have worked with you to submit 10 words that describe you. And maybe they do it anonymously and you say, just send me this paper without your, return address and really get some honest feedback about how people actually view you and the words they would use to describe you, and then see how they match up with that, right?
Wow.
So if it's passionate, if it's these, you'd be really surprised how others can help contribute. And if they know what you're going through, they can support in that way. And those words are super helpful.
That is an excellent idea. Thank you for contributing. That is very actionable. And, at the heart, people want to help people. And so asking someone to do that for you, I'm sure they'd be more than happy to do that.
And now we have another question. What do you mean exactly by emotional intelligence?
So it's reading the room. It's looking at things from someone else's vantage point, not just your own. And this isn't this is Annette's own definition, if you will, but it's really being able to see things from other people's perspective and knowing how other people perceive you. And it's something that what we're seeing is in the emotional intelligence in that sphere, that can be more of a contributor or factor in a hiring decision than the actual skills that you possess. And so there's great resources out right now that you may want to run out to Amazon or to your library and look at some books on emotional intelligence. There's actually some webinars upcoming in the Cincinnati area that may be of real value to you to deepen your understanding and your learning on that topic.
Right, and we'll be sending out some resources for the Xavier Leadership Center around these topics and come at some of those soft skills, communication, emotional intelligence, teams, just things that you can get those soft skills under your belt as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you. Great
Lots
questions.
of people are chatting that these things are super important.
They are so super important. And I appreciate you validating this topic. And I'm glad we've had opportunity to just share together. So since we've talked about all of the negatives, let's talk about those things we do like about job search. So why don't you just respond in the chat box and let us know, what are those things about job search that you actually do like?
Okay, let's see here. Meeting new people.
Yeah, that's got to be an extrovert.
Yeah, building new connections, finding exciting opportunities that you get excited about. Getting excited about doing something new and different, chance to learn about different companies, the potential that's out there. Yeah, resetting yourself. Setting goals and reaching them, meeting a new challenge. Such personal growth, as you move forward. Learning about new companies, exposure to new cultures. Yeah.
You may want to use this time that you're in job search to upskill your skill set and to develop personally and professionally during this time. Using this time, having a little bit of freedom in your schedule, just a chance to maybe volunteer and do some things that you've always wanted to do in your work schedule. Your work-life balance hasn't really afforded that opportunity. So.
Yeah, some more being able to use your second language. Yeah, time to do some research.
Right.
And getting into that. Stretch beyond your comfort zone. Or do what you always wanted to do. Maybe it's that's a great one.
Yeah, it is.
God, if I could go back and do it again, this is what I would do. Right.
Sure. Yeah.
It says job searching can't be a 40-hour week job. So taking some time to enjoy the free time, like you were saying. Yeah.
Good. Yeah. So as we kind of roll this down towards the end, I want to answer the question, how do you move forward in your job search? Just ask yourself, how's what I'm thinking, how's what I'm doing working for me? You may just need to stop and throw yourself a pity party, eat the whole bag of potato chips, the entire container of ice cream, but then wipe your mouth and turn the page. And instead of being paralyzed by the thought of job search, look at it as a new chapter. I probably say this every single day of my work week, and that is one phone call, one email can change your life. One conversation can change your life. And it's funny, when you're in job search, it seems that people think you're contagious, like they're going to catch unemployment if they interact with you. I know, it's bad, right? They say something like, what are you doing these days? And you say, oh, I'm looking for a job, or I lost my job, or I'm in transition. Can you see Eeyore in your mind's eye when I say that? But don't we carry our own weather? What if we state to others instead of, oh, I'm looking for a job, or I'm in transition, we say this, I'm actively engaged in my job search. When we say that, people connect with us and their curiosity is piqued, and they ask questions, and the conversation changes directions. So think about, ask not what can this company do for me, but ask what can I do for the company. Get inside the head of the hiring professional, sit down on the other side of the desk, and ask yourself, would you hire you? If you had several candidates and somebody was making a decision between you and someone else, why you? Why you? You know, I'm going to ask you to work on your homework and just continue to collect that verbiage on your unique selling proposition. And then lastly, let's trust the process. It's a mind shift. We have to embrace and play this hand we've been dealt. How long will it take you to get to your job goal? Let me ask you, what's your realistic goal for when you want to be employed? Let's make that be homework too, to set that goal. You know, Stephen Covey covers in the 7 Habits of the Highly Effective People is begin with the end in mind. So start with the end and then define your action steps as you navigate these series of 8 sessions through GE Credit Union and Xavier Learning Center. Actionable steps. What is my resume catching the right fish? Do I have the right lure there? Is my cover letter right? Like, oh my gosh, did you know they really read the cover letter? Hiring professionals are telling me they spend more time reading the cover letter than they do the resume. What about your LinkedIn presence and your online presence and your connections? I've heard this before, but people say, oh, they knew someone. Well, you know what? You know someone, and using and leveraging your LinkedIn, not to use people, but maximize your connections, setting some goals. And we'll be working on those goals, like how many applications do you want to do in a week? And when, this is a big one, when do you want to do your job search? Somebody said, well, we can't do job search 40 hours a week, but when are you going to carve out that time to actually do job search? And then what are you going to do during that job search process? So we need to figure out what are the steps that we should take to get us where we want to go. And I'm going to leave you with this thought. You know, hindsight really is 2020. Notice in this rear view mirror, when you're looking back, it is crisp and clean, but there's a reason why that our windshield in our car is larger than the rear view mirror. And I'm going to challenge you to look at your future. Look at where you want to go. Not where you've been, but look at where you want to go. And these upcoming sessions can be leveraged in a systematic way to provide support, direction, and the encouragement that you need to get where you want to go. So I mentioned this takeaway card, and I just want to, in a form of review, Carol, just tell you what's on this takeaway card that you'll be receiving. What my grandma said, thinking it so makes it so. Asking yourself, what am I writing on my clean slate? Remembering that attitude rules and we carry our own weather. Remember, one email, one conversation, one phone call can change your life. Saying, I'm actively engaged in my job search, and focus on the windshield versus the rear view mirror. Thank you for allowing me to share today, and thank you for your participation and your valuable contribution as we explored this topic together today.
Great. Thank you so much, Annette. We probably have time for about two or three questions. If anyone has a question they want to ask Annette in particular. We're getting a lot of thanks. So how can you do a follow-up call if you don't have a specific contact and one is not provided on the job ad?
Couple of things. Sometimes I call the main line and I just act like I'm lost. So I'm like, don't do this on a switchboard when they're answering lots of calls, but I would say something like, and my staff would say, Annette, you're so pathetic, but I'd say something like, I don't know if you can help me or not, but I'm just curious, where would you direct me? Who do I need to speak to? So just getting on the good side of the gatekeeper, a little bit of honey, if you will, instead of vinegar. It's not like our call should be like, hey, I haven't heard from you. I submitted a resume, but rather like, I'm just curious where you are in the hiring process. I'm just wondering what advice you might give me. Another ploy is to go on LinkedIn and look under the company and search for the HR contact there to see if you can get a name, so that if you have to go through an automated process, you can maybe get there, or then throwing in the company name in LinkedIn with some of your connections, just to see if, like, do I know somebody that knows somebody in the organization? I'm talking fast like an auctioneer, I know.
So one last question. How much time do you allow to pass before doing your follow-ups?
What I say is 5 business days is traditionally what I recommend that folks do. I typically wouldn't do it beyond that. I would err maybe 3 to 5 business days, but again, our attitude has to be such that I'm just calling, and I use the language, I'm just curious where you're at in the hiring process, so that it's not like, can you tell me what's going on with my resume or my application?
And I would add one thing. I know it always takes longer even than they say it's going to. They have to meet with other people in the organization, and those people are on vacation. It can be frustrating, but a lot of times that whole process, even if you're interviewing and they say it'll be next week, it does take longer than they sometimes even anticipate it's going to. So, stay positive and again, through these sessions, we'll give you the tips and tricks to follow. So thank you so much, Annette. It's been wonderful. Thanks everybody for joining the General Electric Credit Union and Xavier Leadership Center. Thank you for joining us today. And we hope you're walking away with things you can put in place immediately. You will receive an email with a printable takeaway card, as Annette mentioned, and a survey about your experience. We welcome all feedback to continue to add and improve to these webinars. To sign up for the next webinar or listen to the recordings, please visit gecreditunion.org or xavierleadershipcenter.com. Again, I'd like to thank you. I'd like to thank GECU and our presenter Annette today for the partnership and providing these insights to assist you in your job search. We'll see you on August 20th for our next session, your personal brand and strength. So have a great rest of the week, everyone, and we'll see you on the 20th.
Thank you.